We're learning the first ma'amar, the first essay in this week's Torah portion called Miketz, in a book which is called Torah Or. It's written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, Rebbe Shneur Zalman, who also wrote the book, the Tanya. The difference is the book, the Tanya, was written before he was put into prison by his enemies, and this was written after he got out of prison. What's the difference? Because he was put into prison. We just celebrated his release about 250 years ago. We celebrated his release from prison. He was put there by his enemies because of his teachings, because they didn't like his teachings. They were religious Jews, and they didn't like he was teaching about the secrets of the Torah and the oneness of God and how to serve God, and that everyone should love God, and everyone should have awe of God and fear God, and everyone has to do tshuva. They have to, change themselves totally. Even the holiest Jews and the most proficient in Talmud, they have to make a complete overhaul of themselves. And on the other hand, even the simplest of Jews is holy. All the Jewish people are holy. So everyone has an obligation to, on one hand, increase constantly their Torah knowledge and their love of God and fear of God. Everyone has to, and on the other hand, everyone already in potential has all the holiness that they need. Right? Okay, so said the Rebbe, this is all hinted at by the dreams of the dreams that the minister of wine had in prison that he told to Yosef. Now, if you remember, we learned last week's Torah portion that Joseph was thrown by his brothers eventually into prison. His brothers hated him, and he was thrown into prison. And it was a terrible thing, but that was exactly where he was supposed to be, because by means of that, he saved the whole entire world. He became like the second to Paro because of that. Who would dream? And the fact is, the whole thing came as a result of dreams, and especially the dream of the minister of wine. This says the minister of wine, he had this dream that there was a wine branch, and that from it grew grapes, and that he pressed the grapes and he poured the wine into the cup of Paro, who was the evil king. So basically, all these people were pretty evil. I mean, the minister of wine was also evil. But, says the Rebbe, everything that's in the Torah that is on the side of good, that's written for the side of good, also has its counterpart to the side of evil, right? There's Abraham is in the Torah, that's good. And then the counter of that is Abraham was love of God. There's also love of yourself, foreign love, egotism, love of sins, destruction. And then there's Yitzchak. Yitzchak is fear or power for good, for God, and then you can use it. So everything that's good is also as its counterpart, because that's the way God made the world. Zelu Hotzeh, it says, one opposing to the other. But conversely, everything that says in the Torah that's bad also has its good side. So this also comes to tell you that if there's something that's really good, don't think you finished your work. You have to continue and watch out that it doesn't become bad. And similarly, if you have, God forbid, bad character traits, don't give up, because it shows that there's a counterpart that conversely there can also be good. Congrats for it to good. Okay, so let's go back to our thing. Here we're talking about how to get out of exile. It says getting out of exile means basically being aware of God. What's the main thing Moshiach is going to do? He's going to make everyone aware of God, aware of the Creator. He's going to make everyone aware of how amazingly close the Creator is, how amazingly far the Creator is, how amazingly infinite and distant the Creator is, how infinitely close and caring and intimate the Creator is, how wondrous is every aspect of the creation and how awesome is our obligation to improve it. And also how God has given us, each and every one of us, the abilities, the powers, the will, the desire to do whatever we can to improve the creation. Even have a good attitude, giving people a smile, raising your children properly, getting married, etc. Simple things like that can make the whole world into a perfect, beautiful place for everybody. Free of fear and addiction and aggression and lust and depression and all these things, which the world can get along good without those things. So it says, okay, but it starts with us. That's the whole thing. It starts with us. So first of all, it says a person has to, this is mainly talking about the Jewish people, right? But it's also relevant to every human being in the world. In, let's say, not such a mandatory way. It's not part of the essence of the soul of every non-Jew to come to have love of God and fear. I think love of God is not a main thing. I mean, you see that all the religions that the non-Jews made, they could do anything they want. No one was forcing them. None of them came to any sort of a even close awareness of what the Torah is. The Torah, some of them don't even know the Torah even exists. It didn't interest them. The Torah, I mean, God, Judaism is the only religion that says that God himself, the creator of the universe, eternal, is creating everybody. He actually took 3 million people out of a different country. They were in slavery and brought them to this big mountain and gave them all personally the Torah. Now, I mean, that's pretty earth-shaking. So somebody should have tried to think about that. They didn't. And the ones that did use the Torah, they completely messed the whole thing up and misused it and misinterpreted it. Okay. So to that degree, this is all to the Jewish people. Okay, here we go. So what does it say? We have to come to a love of God, an awareness of God. And that, how do you do that? So it says, Boker Tov. That, it says, is the idea of this, that was the dream of the minister of wine. The minister of wine, that was his dream. What was his dream? That there was a stalk, a stick, and then the grew out grapes. The Jewish people are compared to grapes. And now we have to do the work on that we have to press the grapes. That, says the Rebbe, is humility, coming to humility. And when that comes out from that grapes, then there comes out love of God and joy. We have to remove the grapes though first. That's like removing the foreskin over our hearts. And then we put this wine into the cup of paro. Paro means a revelation of God. Priya means a revelation of God. We learned that yesterday. Then there will be a revelation of God in our life. We'll just feel our creator. We'll feel the creator that's creating us, right? There's all sorts of other spiritual feelings. All the other religions are based on some sort of spiritual feelings or enlightenments or born again or something like that. And that's not feeling God. That's not feeling God. That's feeling spirituality. Right? Spirituality is also a very amazing thing, spirituality, but that's also the source of idolatry. Right? We see Christianity is basically idolatry, but it's exciting and it's convincing and it's comforting and it's how do you say? I said inspiring. It's the dynamic and it opens the person up, but it's selfish. It's very, very selfish. And this here we're talking about revealing the creator. So we won't think about benefiting ourselves. We'll think about benefiting the world. That's what it says. You have to circumcise the foreskin of your heart. And then by means of this, you put the cup in the hand of Paro. Paro is this revelation, Priya, removing the foreskin of the heart and even the thin covering over the heart. And that reveals this tremendous godliness in you and also in the whole world. You become an example for the whole world. You become like a minor holy temple. And the holy temple was the place people would go and they would feel godliness and they would feel the truth. I mean, the God is creating everybody. The same God is creating me, the Jews, is creating the non-Jews, is right, is creating the trees and the plants, but the trees and the plants, they don't get excited. They haven't got any responsibility. Human beings have responsibility. And this main responsibility stems from being aware of the Creator, stopping thinking so much about yourself and thinking about the Creator and improving the world according to the Creator's standards. That's the Torah. Non-Jews have 7 Noahide commandments. Okay, says the Rebbe. Pretty simple, right? All you have to do is just remove this foreskin of your heart, press yourself. You get the revelation of this big love of God, this wine, which is love of God and joy. And then you can reveal God. Says the Rebbe, this level of the wine, which is inside of every Jew, just waiting to come out by adopting an attitude of humility, by adopting this attitude of everything I have is a gift being given to me constantly by God, my life, my being, everything. To feel this, actually, you feel this is the humility, that's called pressing the grape. That's called pressing your soul, and that reveals it. Says the Rebbe, but not everybody merits this level. Lo kol adam zochel is a rakish leiv, only people that can really maintain or achieve some level of true honesty with God. Like it says, like it says, only to those of straight heart do they get this true joy. A person that goes straight all of his life. Right? We have the best example. The Torah gives us this amazing example, a very shameful example. The Jews got out of Egypt, and only the Jews that wanted to leave Egypt left. It says that 4/5 of the Jews were left behind in Egypt because they just didn't want to go out. They just didn't want to go out. Egypt had been decimated, and they wanted to stay there and be bosses. And so they didn't want to leave Egypt. It says they died in the plague of darkness. So only the best of the best, whatever the most able to receive godliness, they got out. And they went to Mount Sinai, and sure enough, they received the Torah, and God spoke to them and said, don't worship idols. The first 2 commandments they heard themselves. And as soon as they thought that Moses wasn't going to come down from Mount Sinai, 40 days later, they all worshiped the golden calf. In other words, what does it mean? That people have tendencies. People are naturally selfish. They worry. Everybody worries. You worry about yourself. You worry about tomorrow. Maybe God won't help me. Maybe you get a little angry, you get a little depressed, you get a little lost over there. That's nature, right? That's a natural person. As it says the Rebbe, you're a natural, regular person. Well, chances are slim you're going to get this joy in God. Because you can only get the joy in God if you really, truly think of yourself only as a creation. That you don't think even 1 second that you're the boss, that you're the king, that you call the shots. Because as soon as you think you call the shots, then as soon as you don't get what you want, so you get depressed or you get angry, or right, all of a sudden you say, why should I be loyal to my principles and my values? I'll change my values. Here's a nice little chance to make a little money, have a little pleasure, a little something. To think improperly, to speak improperly, to do. So that's nature. So what are we going to do? If so, this whole thing is not for us. Says the Rebbe, it is for us. Every Jew has the ability to be what's called a tzaddik, has the ability. But 99, until Moshiach comes, then everybody's going to be tzaddikim. But until then, there's a very slim chance that this is going to be revealed. What that whole time is called the book of the Benoni, the middle Jew. And the middle Jew is always fighting this battle, and that he knows what's right, and once in a while he gets inspired like a tzaddik, but generally speaking, he doesn't feel it, doesn't feel God. So this is a person that he hasn't got what's called a straight heart. which is 99.99999% of all the Jews. Of me, it doesn't have it. A person that pagam b'torach, of a person that blemished his ways, v'nitma b'chatas na'orim, or he even did some sort of a sin when he was young. As Ev Shaloli Smoch, he can really never be happy with God in his prayers. Because thoughts confuse us. And you can't control your thoughts. You can control if you accept them or not. But you can't control a stream of thoughts coming up. Right? Like I said, a lot of times they say the difference between an insane person and a healthy person is that an insane person does what a normal person thinks. And with normal people, it comes through your mind a thought, I'll take revenge on my next door neighbor. He drives over my lawn all the time, right? I say, that's stupid, I'm not going to do it. But as soon as you entertain that thought, then you start getting angry at your next door neighbor. You start getting angry at other people. Anger is not such a bad thing. Then you start getting angry at everybody. And then you start getting excited about the thoughts. You take the thoughts a little bit seriously. And then you start to think about it more. And then you start to talk about it. And then it comes to doing. So it says that's thoughts are always, so it says, okay, you can remove your mind from the thoughts. You can remove your attention from these thoughts, which that's what every normal person does. But the thoughts still keep coming up. And because of that, you're never going to really be happy with God, because these thoughts come from your egotism, from your lack of trust or reliance or awareness of God. And therefore, if so, what's the advice for these 99.99% of the Jews? There's another type of wine inside of us, and this is more accessible. This is what's called yain meshaker. This is called wine that inebriates, makes you drunk. Like it says, Tanu shecher la'oved v'yain lamari nefesh. It says, it's a sentence in Proverbs. Give alcoholic beverage to one who has lost something, like a mourner, someone who's mourning. The yain lamari levav, and give wine to the person who's bitter of heart. Yishtav yishkach risho, he'll drink and he will forget his poverty. Why do people go to bars? Bars are so popular, right? Because a person drinks and he forgets temporarily his badness. He forgets his bad situation. He forgets his bad attitude toward the world, etc. Sometimes it makes it worse, but at least it changes it. To come on, like the rabbis say, Gabi Hargil based in, it says the people that were guilty in a Jewish court and they were punishable by death, right? There's death penalty in Judaism. It hasn't been used for like over 2,000 years, but there's a penalty in the death penalty. And even when there was the death penalty, it was almost impossible to implement it, because there were so many details that had to be. But anyways, there is such a thing as a death penalty. And before a person was taken to be killed, they would give him a cup of wine or something before they would kill him, in order to titrav dato, to confuse him, so that he'll be able to bear the pain of death. Lochen, at least a little bit. Lochen, therefore, it used to be a still not 100% healthy. Okay. Used to be that before they had anesthetic, like in the Civil War, these things, they used to give people, maybe even World War I also, but they used to get people drunk. Excuse me. They would give a person wine to drink, they would get drunk, and then they would amputate, whatever they would do. Like it says, the Nusach of the Arizal, like the Arizal says, the great mystical Jew, if you want to call it, lived like 450 years ago. If I have defiled, the Jewish soul corresponds to God, made in God's image, right? So there's the Yud, of God's name. That's the Yud, the highest level of the Jewish soul. So if I didn't say Shema Yisrael, whatever, properly, then the punishment, spiritual punishment, is a stoning. So if so, because we have not served God properly, so each and every one of us really, to some very refined, high spiritual way, is guilty and is punishable by death. So what do you do before the punishment of death? They used to give a person wine, the wine that made a person drunk. And especially when a person sees in himself that his heart is all stuffed up, bekirbo, inside of himself, it's like a stone. You don't get excited about God at all. This is what we call the level of being stoned to death. That a person is certainly guilty. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be killed spiritually? The punishment of death. If a person sees that his heart cannot get excited about God, that means his heart is like a stone. That's the punishment of death. That's it. I mean, unlike in the judicial court, when a person gets killed, so he gets killed permanently. Permanently, when in Jewish court, a person is found guilty of murder or something like that, so he's killed permanently. But our death is not permanent. It's just you look at yourself and you see that, wow, I'm dead. I mean, I have any sensitivity about God, like a dead person. My heart is like a stone. The Cain also, all of a sudden he sees that his heart is filled with all sorts of desires for forbidden things. This is the punishment of burning. There were 4 punishments in Judaism. One of them was getting stoning, death by stoning. It depends on what the sin was. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, a normal sense, why this punishment couldn't. But nevertheless, there's choking, and there's beheading, and there's burning. Burning is they poured molten lead, the burning lead down a person's throat. And like I said, they've almost never applied these punishments, if ever. I don't know if they ever did. Or how much more so if you know that he did a sin, especially in his past. It says Bechatas Norim. And the Cain also called Chad Lefum Shiyud, each and every person, and each person knows himself. You know what you did. Now the Rebbe, who is the Rebbe speaking to? He's speaking to religious people here. He's speaking to his Chassidim. He's not that we should read this and say, yeah, sure, I know that here he's talking about, and then my next door neighbor, wow, that guy's really bad. It's not so. He's talking about me and you. I mean, he's not even talking about you. He's talking about me. So a person looks and he sees in himself that he's totally insensitive to God. This is the advice to take. That you're able to accept on yourself these 4 deaths of Beit Din, b'shleimus, in a complete way. Then you have to drink this cup of wine. You cup the wine, and then you can accept it. Okay, that which my heart is all stuffed up to God, this is a punishment. I accept it. I've been punished. My heart is insensitive. Right, that I have all sorts of lusts for forbidden things. This is a punishment from God to keep me like a dead person. He's not in contact with the world. Same as I'm not in contact with God. Okay, if I accept this punishment, then that's it. I'm free. But how are you going to accept the punishment? So it says people don't want to accept it. They don't want to. They want to be separated from God. That's why they're so insensitive and they have so much lust. So it says, my advice is take this wine, not the happy wine. That's only for pure people. You have to take this wine, which is called bitter wine. Wine which makes everyone drunk. And is like this. And it says in the Zohar, Zakai Kashur, people that are pure and true, Kol Yoma, all of their days, Mistakli Benavshe, they look at themselves, Ki'ilu Hayoma, that like that day, and Mistakli Mis Tal Keb Meoma, as though that day they're going to die. Pure, holy people, true Jews that are true and they're holy. So every day they look at themselves as though this is the last day of my life. Like Yorah says, the Rebbe, this is an attitude to take. This is not understood. We're talking about, says Zakai, This is talking about the tzaddikim, holy people. And it says Zakai Kashut, this is they're truly holy. Right? These are even higher. This is a higher level of a tzaddik, a righteous person. Why is it Shibechotam? How is it that the Zohar praises them? That it says that these people who are pure, holy tzaddikim, that they look at themselves as though they're going to be killed. They're going to die that day. That's the highest level. That every day you should look at yourself like you're going to get killed, that you're in other words, that you're going to get punished by the court with one of these different types of death. Why? What do they do to deserve death? But the Zohar says they should. What's it talking about? Ella, like this. Afilu tzaddik gomer, even a person that's a total tzaddik, sheholach lagan eden, it goes up to heaven. Tzorach tavila benar dinor. It says that you go up to heaven, you have to have what's called go through the river of fire. V'tafilahu la'avir koach hazocher mizeh olam. So he goes through this river of spiritual fire to forget any impression he had of this world, any connection he had to this world. Because you can't get your place in heaven. Calls a mancha zocher afilu mixas the mixas the inyani olam hazeh. As long as you're attached in any way to anything in this world. When a person goes from strength to strength, every month and every month, every Shabbat, a person, all basar yishtachavot, it says in heaven, it says that every month, every Shabbat, the soul gets higher and higher. In order to elevate itself, it has to have od tevila benar dior. It has to have another immersion in the river of fire. Another river of fire, lishkoach gama sagas, to forget the pleasure that you received in the lower heaven, and then the higher heaven than that. This is all a process that occurs, of course, until the raising of the dead. The soul goes from level to level, or until the soul is brought back into the world in a reincarnation. But what's it talking about? The soul, in order to elevate from one level to another, it has to, so to speak, die to the previous level. This a person should put into his heart, should take to heart. Behold, Indian Gan Eden, the whole thing of going to heaven, this is that you get a pleasure from the ray of godliness, the ray of the Shekhinah. And it's just a ray. If, what's already saying, in order just to get pleasure from a ray, a little bit of a reflection of God's presence, that you have to remove any connection to this world, that's up in heaven. It's only talking about rays of God. In this world, we're coming to talk about clinging to the essence of God. If you want to come to cling to the essence of God by means of Torah and prayer, how much more so that you have to totally forget any connection to this world. That's what the Zohar means, that he has to remove any connection to this world in order that he can cling to God when he's learning Torah and doing and praying. So if so, the Rebbe is saying that this wine of bitterness before a person is put to death is something we have to do all the time. And death doesn't mean that you have to leave consciousness, you go unconscious, you go into a coma. Exactly the opposite. In this case, it means death means disconnecting yourself to any level of ignorance that you had before in order to come to a higher level of the creator of the universe. And that's in heaven, where heaven is only spiritual things. We're talking about in this world, we're talking about trying to connect to the essence of God, because the essence of God is found in the Torah and in prayers. In this world, there is no, in the world, the heaven, there's no commandments. There's no learning Torah as a commandment. Behold, there's another type of a river of fire, which is below. And that comes from what's called the sweat of the angels. There's angels which are called the holy animals. This is, what is holy animals? This is a tremendous love that comes from these animals, these angels that have love, And it says there's sweat that comes, in other words, as the result of this love. This is where the happy wine comes from. Excuse me. This comes from the this high awareness of the angels of God. It gives them a tremendous amount of love, and this tremendous amount of love really inspires them. This comes from the what's left over from this love of the angels, that they start to really work and go closer to Hashem. Like a person that's happy at a wedding, he dances and dances at the wedding, the sweat, the same thing with the angels. So if so, this a person should put to his heart, this descent, that how this, I'm sorry, I skipped the line. And this comes from the sweat of these angels comes to a very low place. And this comes to be shmorim and psolos biridasam la'olamazeh achomi. This love can also come to be physical love for improper things. But we're saying this love eventually has a very high source. And so this we should take to heart, that this reason that we came down into this physical world, and it's so confusing, and even the level of the love and the joy of the angels, which is a wonderful thing when it comes into this world, it can be totally misused. Why? So why is it that a person, God put us down so low, and that we're so far away from godliness, that we're misunderstanding and misusing everything? When a person thinks about this, yismarmar libo ma'od, his heart will become very bitter, beyitzak al Hashem, and he will cry out to God, but sarlo, very bitterly. This is what's called this bitter wine, this drunk wine. Tzak libam el Hashem. Ad sheyitzeh midato, until a person goes out of his mind. What does it mean, out of his mind? Pirish, he goes out of his previous thoughts and value systems and his weird, his improper attitudes that he was attached to all of his, the rest of the day, all of his life. The yitka machshavaso, and he'll go out of his bad mind and he'll insert his good thoughts, ba'omek, in a deep way, in this bitterness of his soul, until he removes any sort of badness that he had before. Right? How did I do those things? How could it possibly be that I was part of one of these gang members? How could it be that I stole? Oh yeah, I used to lie. How could it be I lied? I made so many people feel bad. He feels very bitter about it, right? It's a thing. How could I have done it? And I did it. I did it because I want to do it, and I still want to do it. And it's terrible. I'm an awful person. Suddenly you realize, no, I'm not an awful person. It's just that I entertained awful thoughts, and those thoughts I thought was me. I was totally mistaken. Mistaken identity. A person, but he realizes I can stop thinking these bad thoughts. I can change my mind, but you have to do it through tremendous bitterness. It has to be a tremendous regret of doing the bad things, but not so much of doing the bad things, of having the bad attitude, which will bring me to do it again. That's called making a resolution for the future. That's called tshuva. Tshuva means regretting the bad things in the past and making a firm resolution for the future. It comes from the same thing, this bitterness. That's the level of the wine that makes drunk. A person will drink this bitterness, in other words, this cup of bitterness, and he'll forget his poverty, how impoverished he is, that he's far away from God, and he's not in any way doing the reason that he's being created for. By means of this, a person can pray, and he can say, Baruch atah lenochach. He can say, blessed are you, God, from his depths of his heart. What does it mean, blessed are you, God? It means that I want God to be revealed here. Blessed means to bring God down. As long as a person is just thinking about himself, then he can't think about God. Right? All these other religions that you're going to go to heaven, you're going to get a benefit, you're going to be kept, you're going to be saved, you're going to be watched, you're going to be protected. You. And a person saying, I'm going to go to heaven. I'm not those other people. They don't believe. They're not going to go to heaven. I'm going to go to heaven, and I'm going to be protected, and I'm going to be one of the chosen ones. And I, a capital I, a big I, a huge I. That's the source of all evil. That's what brings people to evil. But it's a whole different type of evil. It's not a type of evil like Hitler or somebody like that. It's an evil meaning that you are selfish. You're not doing the reason that you're put into the world for. As soon as a person realizes that he's messed the whole thing up, so he becomes tremendously bitter from the depth of his heart. And this bitterness, this enables him to accept the punishment of death. What does it mean, the punishment of death? To die from all of the improper attitudes that he's had before. There's some people that even make the use of this born again, right? Born again. But born again. There's also in the world of evil, different levels of evil, right? Like when the Jewish people, when they saw the golden calf, they became happy. They're born again, right? They're born again. They were happy. They were dancing around, right? We've got a new leader. He allows us to do what we want. Not like Moses kept telling us we can't do what we want all the time and all these laws. Now we can be free and we can do. That was the golden calf. When a person realizes that the only reason he just changed from one foreign god to another foreign god, from one idol to another idol, is because of his egotism. He becomes very bitter from the depths of his heart, and this purifies the person. He dies to all of the selfishness that he had. Ke'inyan Amarirus, this whole idea of bitterness is on the past, because the person is very bitter on the fact that he has concealed God. Because if he would have just felt godliness, Yisbarech, I'll call upon him, he would be fear God like he fears people. Right? Why is it that people do sins? It says they do sins because they don't think God sees them. They don't even know if God really exists. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he said to his pupils on his deathbed, his pupils asked him, is there something, you give us last advice? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Halavai, it should only be that you should fear God like you fear people. He said, because you should know that if a person wants to do a sin, he says, I hope nobody's watching me. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that he was the holiest of the holies. So therefore, we should have the fear of God at least like we have the fear of people. But the reason we don't is because this foreskin covers over, because we're sunk into our own egotism, etc. And therefore, when a person returns back to the Creator, she'll request that God should reveal from the depth of the heart. That's what it means. Baruch Atah. When we say the beginning of the blessing, Baruch Atah means God, I want you to be revealed. The call to feel is that all the prayers and all the requests, hey, Mesudurim al derech are this. Every time you say a blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem, Baruch, blessed are you, God, we're saying, God, I really want you to be revealed. Baruch means to be revealed, to draw down. I want you to be revealed here. I want you to be revealed like you were at Mount Sinai, like you were when you took the Jews out of Egypt, like you were in the Holy Temple. I want you to be revealed. But before that, you don't want anything with God to be revealed. What do you want? You want another zero in your bank account or something, right? Instead of a 10,000, it'll say 100,000 a year. Happy. That's what interests us. But it should interest us, no, that the revelation of God, that's really what should interest us. Why aren't we interested? Because we're too sunk in our own selfishness. Says the Rebbe, when a person realizes what he's missing, then he becomes tremendously bitter. That's this wine of bitterness. And that enables us to die to our previous improper attitudes. And also Kabbalah's Malchus Shemayim, and also in the accepting of the yoke of heaven. We talked about that before. When you say Shema Yisrael, but Emet, really, when you say, listen, God, listen, Jews, God is one, it means God is one. You would love God with all of your heart, all of your might, all of your soul, all of your might, that you'll say this in truth. Keep Emet Ritzon of Echevso, because the true will and desire of every Jew is to cling to God. Umar Nafsho, and a person becomes very bitter on the fact that he's far away from God. He has distanced the face of the king from him. Even though the fact he still is far away, but nevertheless, Im kol zeh yesh bechinas havdalah. A person separates himself, mishu mi hu arachok, kamosh katuv b'makom acher, like it's written in another place. Who is really far? True, I'm not like a big tzaddik, but I'm not as far away as I was before. At least I'm less far away. But God, that enables you. This wine enables you. Tzorich mikodem haschita. You also have to squeeze this wine also to get it out. Namely, how does a person do that? The same thing, this humility. A person has to make himself like shirayim, like leftovers, right? God creates all these people in the world, and I don't know what they're doing, but I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, right? And I'm just a big miracle. God is creating me all the time from nothing, and I'm not even grateful. I don't return anything to him. So a person should think deep in his mind in this. A person thinks all of the thoughts, all the deeds that I've been thinking, acting, doing, none of it is, it's lo Hashem, none of this is for God. God is doing everything for me, and I'm not doing anything for him. Then a person becomes very, very humble. Okay, there's another beautiful part over here, but we finished for today. The point is, okay, so he wants to say, again, he's saying, when a person is not attached to God, so that's the dream of Paro that he had with the 7 good cows, which that's the good personality that we have, get eaten up by the bad cows. Therefore, a person can fall into what's called bad character traits, bad emotions. That eats up the good oxes. That first of all, you can have these good natural feelings of Judaism and God, and then afterwards immediately comes the bad ones and eat it up, and you don't even know that they're there. Which is not that's the level of Paro, of the bad side, which is not the case. Yosef, the whole idea of Yosef, which is present in each and every one of our souls, this is like its name, Yosef Mosif. It adds and increases pleasure and nachat ruach and satisfaction to God. Liot mochon l'shivto, that we're ready for God's presence to accompany us, and we do everything we can to make the world as much of a blessed place as possible. Lios l'dira b'tachtonim, to improve the world. Instead of thinking about us and thinking about going to heaven, we think about God and bringing God down to earth. Then he doesn't have these bad emotions eating up the good ones. Lo shava paros tovos. Then a person is not so concerned with his emotions, his love of God, his emotions about God, his spiritual feelings, going to heaven, and etc. All these good emotions, he's not concerned with them either. All he's concerned with is one thing, that God himself should be revealed in the world. He wakes up like from a dream. He doesn't feel the good oxes, the good cows, his good emotions to God. He doesn't feel for sure doesn't feel the bad emotions, the selfish things that eat up the good ones. All he feels is the essence of God. And that was like the level of Yosef. Yosef, he ruled over all of Egypt because he didn't do anything that God didn't want him to. He didn't say anything to God. He didn't think anything that God, he didn't feel anything that God didn't want him to. He didn't have any of his own emotions. Everything he did was exactly what the Creator wants. I don't know if you've ever seen, sometimes there's these pianists or musicians or whatever, that they're really, really excellent, right? You see they're playing, they don't have any emotions. You don't see them any emotions. There's some of them that wave around, but there's some of them that you just don't see anything on their face. Once in a while, they play this fantastically beautiful music and the crowd is all swooning and they're going this, and the person, you don't see anything. Why? Because he's totally involved in the essence of the music. Or big, scientists or big doctors or whatever, right? They don't get all excited. Oh, I understand. I found out, you've got it, this disease, and I can cure it. I'm so successful. I'm so happy. No, it's truth. They're just connected to what the truth is. When we're connected to the truth, is therefore all the emotions and everything, they become too small. It becomes sort of infantile. And that's the idea of Yosef saving all the Jewish people, revealing the good of Paro, true revelation of God, and explaining the dreams so that you realize that it was a dream. All this thing about the bad cows eating up the good cows, you don't need the bad cows, you don't need the good cows either. All you need is the essence of God, just to wake up. And that's the essence of what Judaism is. And the one that's going to wake us all up is Moshiach now. Let's now learn the Devar Malchut.